Dad treated us like soldiers. I finally snapped. What happened next wasn't part of his plan. My name's Travis. I'm 17, a senior in high school, and I live in Memphis with my family. But calling it a family doesn't really sit right. It's more like I live in a chain of command. My dad is Wade Scott, a former Army engineer, and if there's one thing to understand about him, it's this: he never left the military. Not really. He just brought the battlefield home. He's tall, 6 feet 3 inches, always walks like he's inspecting a line of troops. His voice has this sharp, grinding edge to it, like someone trying to dig through concrete with a bent shovel. His face might have once looked normal, but it's hardened now. Stone jaw, eyebrows like blades, and these cold eyes that scan a room like he's looking for something out of order. You get used to flinching when he talks, because every word lands like an order, or a sentence. He runs a construction company, and from what I hear, he's actually good at it. His crew listens, gets things done, and they respect him. At home, though, that's not what it feels like. At home, we're not a crew. We're a platoon, and he's not a boss, he's a commander. He gets home every night after 9. Without fail. Same steel-toed boots, same dust on his collar. Sometimes I hear the front door click and I'll tense, even if I'm just sitting in my room trying to do homework. He doesn't slam it. That'd be too obvious. He opens it like someone entering a barracks. Quiet, but full of purpose. If I'm in the kitchen or sitting on the couch, he doesn't say hi. He just scans the room. If something's out of place, Jacob's shoes in the hallway, a cereal box left open, he doesn't raise his voice. He says something like unacceptable or correct it, and then walks off. You're left scrambling to fix whatever crime you didn't know you committed. My little brother Jacob is 10. He's been molded. He knows not to speak unless spoken to. Eats exactly what he's given. Finishes homework before dinner. Honestly, he reminds me more of a background character in a war movie than a kid. He's not cold, just quiet. Trained. He flinches before asking anything. And I hate that I recognize the same reflex in myself. And then there's Mom. She's here. Physically, yeah, she's around. But I don't think she's been present in years. Her name's Laura. She used to be an art teacher. Now she just sort of exists in the house. She does the chores, laundry, dinner, dishes, but it's like her eyes are somewhere else. She doesn't argue with him. She doesn't protect us. She doesn't ask questions. When I was a kid, she used to read to me before bed. I remember her voice being soft, kind of musical, but I haven't heard her speak in that voice in a long time. Now she just moves like someone trying to avoid setting off tripwires. I don't even know what she paints anymore. I used to sneak peeks at her sketchbooks, birds, flowers, stuff like that, but I haven't seen one lying around in years. Me? I try. I try not to mess up. I try not to say the wrong thing. But I'm 17, and sometimes I can't help it. I'll forget to take out the trash, or I'll stay out a bit too late, or I'll talk back when I just can't take the silence anymore. And when that happens, he doesn't yell. Yelling would mean he's angry. What he does is worse. He punishes. He'll say something like, Travis has lost his privileges. And suddenly my phone's gone. Or I can't use the car. Or I'm grounded for 2 weeks. He does it calm. Like he's logging it into a system. Like I'm some soldier who failed inspection. The worst part? It's not even the punishments. It's the way he looks at me. Like I'm a disappointment he expected all along. Like I've confirmed something for him. There's no fury in it. Just this cold, final disapproval that hits deeper than any shouting could. Every day, I walk on eggshells. I don't talk much at dinner. I keep my grades up. I avoid the living room if he's in there. And sometimes, when it's late and quiet, I just wish, just once, he'd say something kind. Like, good job on that test. Or, how was school? Or even just, you okay? But I know that's not coming. It never has. Captain Scott isn't a dad. He's a commander. And this house isn't a home. It's a post. I don't think he even knows what love sounds like anymore. And I'm just trying to survive until I can leave. Dinner was the same as always. Plain chicken, overboiled potatoes, Jacob chewing with military precision, Mom quiet. Eyes locked on her plate like it was some kind of code she was trying to break. My fork scraped the edge of the plate when I reached for another piece, and that alone felt too loud. The clock ticked. The air was thick, full of that weight you can't describe but always feel when he's sitting at the head of the table. Wade Scott, my father, arms crossed like a border guard. Jacob tried to say something about his school project. He'd been working on this hydrogen rocket for weeks. Hadn't shut up about it when we were alone, which for Jacob was a miracle in itself. His voice cracked when he said, I think it's going to launch this week. Let's talk. More potatoes, Dad cut in, without even lifting his head. Jacob froze, fork halfway to his mouth. The color drained out of him like someone yanked a cord. I watched it happen. Watched the switch flick in his eyes, like he'd just been told to shut down and disappear. I stared at my plate, waiting for the next command, like always. But this time it didn't come. What came was something else. It was like a dam cracked open in my chest, fast and loud and impossible to stop. Maybe he wouldn't be silent if you didn't erase everything he says. The words came out sharp, like glass. I didn't plan them, didn't rehearse it in my head. They just came out. For a second I thought maybe no one heard me. But then I felt the change. The room didn't go quiet. It went still. It went dead. Like someone pulled the battery out of the whole house. My mom's fork stopped midair. Jacob stared at me, mouth still slightly open, eyes wide like he'd just seen someone step off a cliff. My father raised his head slow, deliberate, and when his eyes found mine, it was like being in the center of a sniper scope. What did you say? His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. That sentence had the weight of steel behind it. I could hear my own heartbeat, not in my chest, but in my neck, loud and fast, and crawling up into my skull. My hands were shaking under the table, but I didn't sit back. I didn't break eye contact. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was everything. Years of walking on glass. Years of silence. Of rules and commands, and the cold way he shut down anything human in this house. We're not your recruits, I said, my voice low but solid. We're children, and you're strangling us. I'll never forget the look that crossed his face. Not anger, not shock, just a cold, blank processing. Like he was calculating a number, and the number didn't add up. He stood up stiffly, like a machine unfolding. Every move sharp, controlled. He didn't shout. He didn't throw anything. He just said it. My door is your door. Go. That was it. I didn't say anything back. Didn't ask where I was supposed to go. Didn't pack a bag. I didn't even stop to look at Jacob or Mom. I just stood up, walked to the door, grabbed my sneakers, my jacket, and my phone off the counter. My fingers fumbled for a second with the laces. I think I was shaking more than I realized. The door made a soft click when it shut behind me. The air outside hit my skin like a slap. Cold, wet. I started walking. I don't even remember what street I turned on first. All I know is I didn't look back. Not once. It was already dark by the time I found myself at the old baseball field on the edge of the park. Same gravel paths, same crooked bench with one loose plank that creaked when you leaned too far to the left. I hadn't been there in years, not since I quit Little League. Back when Mom still brought orange slices in a Tupperware and Dad used to bark instructions from the fence like he was coaching the Yankees. I don't know why I went there exactly. Maybe I just needed a place that didn't talk back. The field was empty, lit only by the distant amber glow from the street lamps. The grass was overgrown around the edges, and the backstop net was torn in the corner, fluttering slightly in the wind. I sat there with my hood up, phone in my pocket, legs stretched out in front of me. The gravel crunched under my sneakers every time I shifted. I didn't know where else to go. No friends I could crash with. No place I'd feel like I wasn't intruding. I just sat. Eventually I checked my phone. One message. It was from Mom. He had no right. But you better come back. I stared at the screen for a long time. My thumb hovered over the reply icon, but I didn't type anything. What could I say to that? It didn't sound like comfort. It sounded like surrender. Like her way of saying the system is broken, but at least it's familiar. My hands were cold. I shoved them deeper into my sleeves and leaned forward, elbows on knees, breath clouding in front of me. Maybe an hour passed. Maybe more. I didn't move. Then I heard it. Footsteps on gravel. Slow, heavy, not rushed. The kind of step you recognize without turning around. I didn't look. I already knew. I just listened as they came closer, until the sound stopped right behind the bench. There was a pause, and then he sat down. It was him. Wait. My father. Still in his work jacket, the one with the faded patch on the sleeve and the dried concrete dust along the zipper. I didn't say anything, and he didn't say anything right away either. We just sat there, both looking out at the field. The silence wasn't exactly comfortable, but it wasn't a standoff either. It just was. I used to play shortstop here, he said finally, voice low, rougher than usual, but not sharp. We had one coach. No helmets. You got hit in the face, you rubbed dirt on it. I nodded, but didn't look at him. I wanted you to have more than me, he said after a pause. Maybe I overreacted. That was it. No drawn-out speech. No heartfelt plea. Just that. Not an apology. Not really. But something shifted in the air. A crack, maybe. Not enough to let the light in, but enough to feel that there might be some beyond the wall. We sat there for a few more minutes, both staring out like there was something important on that field, something worth watching. Then he stood up. I could use an extra set of hands tomorrow. At the facility, he said. If you're up for it. I didn't answer right away. I waited until he started walking away, boots crunching against the gravel again, before I said, yeah, I'll come. Not for him. Not because of some speech or promise. But because I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't broken. That walking away didn't mean I had to stay gone forever. I wasn't doing it to earn his approval or fix what couldn't be fixed. I was doing it because I still had a spine. Because maybe, just maybe, I was still in control of who I wanted to be. He picked me up just after 7. Didn't say much when I got in the truck, just nodded and handed me a coffee in a paper cup, black, no sugar, just like he drinks it. I added a packet of sweetener when he wasn't looking. The drive was quiet, radio low, windows fogged from the cold. I figured we were heading to one of the usual sites, some construction lot or a concrete pour-out in Midtown. But he turned off the main road near Shelby Park, and after a few more blocks we pulled into this small gravel lot next to a brick building I'd never noticed before. The sign out front read Hope Bridge Community Center. It didn't look like much, faded paint, rust on the gutters, weeds curling around the gate. But behind the building, the back lot had been cleared and dug out. There were pallets of wood, raised bed frames, shovels lined up in the dirt, wheelbarrows full of compost, and a crowd of people moving like an organized swarm. Teens in bright volunteer shirts, women unloading bags of topsoil, an older man hammering a plank into place while a little girl held the nails. It wasn't just a facility. It was a project. His company had donated the labor and materials to build a garden for the center, something for the kids who came through there. I heard someone say it was for children from difficult families. That word, difficult, hung in the air like it meant more than anyone wanted to explain. He walked straight to the worksite, barely breaking stride. Volunteers nodded as he passed. Some called him Wade, a few Mr. Scott, and I followed like I'd done 100 times before, half a step behind, watching him in his element. Only this time something was different. He didn't bark orders. He didn't pace like a drill sergeant checking lines. He explained, patiently, calmly. One of the boys, maybe 6 or 7, spilled half a watering can onto his shoes. I expected the usual tight jaw, the squint, the sigh of disapproval. But instead, he crouched, patted the kid's shoulder, and said, "Good effort. Just try to lift from the bottom next time." Then he smiled. Not a big one, just the corner of his mouth. But it was real. That stopped me cold. I kept helping, moving soil, screwing boards, hauling bags of mulch. But my mind kept circling back to the look on his face when that kid spilled the water. I'd seen that face on construction sites when things went right. Never at home. Never with Jacob. Never with me. Around midday, I ducked inside to wash my hands. The community center had an industrial sink near the kitchen and shelves full of canned goods, paper towels, and juice boxes. The hallway smelled like old crayons and cinnamon. As I dried off, a woman approached, mid-50s maybe, short silver hair, long green cardigan with dirt on the sleeves. She smiled like someone who meant it. "You must be Travis," she said. I nodded, not sure what to expect. "I'm Mrs. Dane. I run this place. Your dad told us you'd be coming. Said you're his main assistant. Said you're as tough as a tank." I blinked. It didn't register at first. "He said that?" I asked. "Oh yes. Couldn't stop bragging about you this morning. Said you'd outwork any of his guys if you were given the chance." I just stood there, holding a damp paper towel, the noise of hammers and shovels drifting in through the back door. He'd never said anything like that to me. Not once. Not even close. I didn't know what to do with it. The idea that somewhere outside our house, he talked about me like I was something good. Something solid. I went back out without saying much. Picked up the drill, sank screws into the last frame, kept working with the others. But inside my head, everything was shifting. Quiet, slow, but definite. Like the sound of gravel under boots. Steady, deliberate. Moving forward even when you don't know the direction. His name was Leo. 8 years old, wiry frame, loud sneakers. One of those kids who makes friends with everyone in 5 minutes like it's just something he was born knowing how to do. I was shoveling mulch into one of the raised beds when he walked over with a juice box in his hand, tilted his head, and said, "You look strong. Can I help?" He didn't wait for an answer. Just picked up the smaller shovel lying in the grass and started copying my movements like he was training for some kind of mulch Olympics. A few minutes later, he was telling me about his science class, his favorite dinosaur, the video game his cousin let him play even though his mom says it's too violent. I just nodded, smiled a little, and kept working. Somewhere in the middle of that, he started calling me Big Bro. Just like that. Like it was a title I'd earned by letting him share my wheelbarrow. It should have been funny. Or maybe sweet. But something about it stuck in my chest and didn't let go. He had no dad. I learned that later from one of the volunteers. His mom drops him off at the center when her shifts overlap. Said he keeps to himself most days unless someone pulls him into a group. But today he was lit up. Energy bouncing off the walls. Following me like a shadow. Then my dad showed up. I saw it happen. Leo was trying to carry a watering can twice his size and sloshed half of it down the front of his shirt. I was about to step in when my father beat me to it. He knelt down, took the can gently, showed him how to balance the handle better. He nudged the cap on Leo's head so it sat straight and patted him once on the back like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Good effort, soldier," he said, smiling. Smiling. Not the tight-lipped nod I usually got. Not the thin-laced approval delivered like it cost him something. It was easy, fluid, like he'd been waiting his whole life for someone to hand him that exact moment. I watched the whole thing from across the garden bed, shovel still in my hand, chest locked tight. Later, I caught them crouched by the tomato row. My dad showing Leo how to plant without choking the roots, using the back of his calloused hand to brush away excess soil. Leo laughed when he slipped and got his jeans dirty. And Wade, the man who once grounded me for tracking dirt into the hallway, actually laughed back. "Is he your dad?" Leo asked me later when we were dragging empty bags of soil to the trash bin. "He looks scary, but he's cool." I didn't answer him right away, just stared at the gravel under my boots like it might tell me something I didn't already know. That sentence stuck in my ears. Scary, but cool. Scary I understood. Cool I didn't. I felt it build in my chest, slow at first, then hotter by the second. Not rage, not even jealousy, just something deeper. A burning that curled into my stomach and stayed there, heavy and mean. Why was it easy for him to be kind to Leo? Why did he know how to kneel, to adjust a cap, to laugh at a stain on someone else's jeans, but not at our dinner table? Why could he teach a stranger's kid to plant tomatoes with patience and warmth, but couldn't sit across from Jacob without turning him into a statue? Why could he kneel in the dirt for Leo and never once crouch to where I was, when I needed it most? I kept dragging bags to the bin. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see another smile that didn't belong to me. The sun was high by then, cutting sharp angles across the gravel, and most of the volunteers had scattered into patches of shade. We took our lunch on the hood of the pickup, paper-wrapped sandwiches from some local spot my dad knew. Mine was too salty, his too dry, but neither of us said anything. We just sat there, legs hanging off the front bumper, chewing in the silence. I don't know why I asked. Maybe because the day had been weird enough already. Maybe because I couldn't get Leo's face out of my head. Or maybe because I needed to know if all of this, the garden, the center, the gentler version of the man beside me, was real or just some temporary detour before the next command came crashing down. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, unwrapping the rest of my sandwich slowly. "I mean, you're not getting paid. You brought your crew. Materials. Why here?" He didn't answer right away, just kept chewing, eyes focused on something across the field. It felt like I was talking to a wall again, and I was about to let it go when he finally swallowed and said, "I grew up here." I turned my head toward him, surprised. He nodded once, still not looking at me. "Back when this place was just cinder block and chain link. We lived in the basement apartment across the street. When my father walked out, my mother started working 16 hours a day, cleaning houses, nights at a hospital laundry. This center, back then, it was just some church people handing out sandwiches and handing out secondhand coats. But it saved us. Me and my brothers. We ate here. We did homework here. We slept here, some nights." His voice was calm, almost casual, like he was telling someone else's story. But I felt the edges of it, the weight, the years baked into it. I didn't say anything, just waited. After a long pause, he added, "I didn't know how to be a son, and I don't know how to be a father, but I want to fix at least something." That hit harder than anything else he'd said in the last 2 days. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even emotional. It was just raw, like he'd cut it out of himself piece by piece and laid it on the table without asking if anyone wanted to see it. I stared down at the sandwich in my lap. The crinkle of the wax paper sounded too loud. I didn't know what the hell to say to that. And maybe I didn't need to. But something shifted in my head right then. For the first time, I thought maybe he wasn't the monster I'd built up in my mind, the cold engine that ran our house on rules and silence and intimidation. Maybe he was just broken in places I couldn't see before. Broken the same way I was. The same way Jacob probably was. Holding something cracked together with duct tape and pride and hoping no one noticed it was leaking underneath. We sat there like that for a while, not speaking. Just two people on the hood of a truck, chewing through old ghosts in the middle of a dirt lot. Nothing fixed, nothing forgiven, but something felt different. Something felt possible. The garden looked finished, but also like something that was only just beginning. Rows of fresh soil lined with cedar planks, wildflowers blooming near the fence, a set of benches arranged beneath the only shade tree on the lot. The air smelled like mulch and sun-warmed wood. Volunteers moved in clusters, chatting, holding paper plates piled with cookies and lemonade cups sweating in their hands. I stood near the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, watching everything without really seeing it. Mrs. Dane called for everyone's attention. She stood on one of the garden beds like it was a stage, holding a small microphone that didn't work half the time, her voice carrying anyway. "This space is more than a garden," she said. "It's a promise. To every kid who needs a place to grow. And this promise is here because of one man and the crew he brought with him. This garden is a credit to Wade Scott and to his son, Travis." There was clapping, cameras flashing. A little girl dropped her juice box and laughed as it squirted onto her shoes. I barely noticed. My head was spinning. I heard my name, but it sounded like it belonged to someone else. Then I felt it. His arm around my back. Not stiff. Not formal. A full pull-in. He hugged me. In front of everyone. No warning. No hesitation. Just this heavy, undeniable presence pressing against my side. "This is Travis," he said, loud enough for the people in the front row to hear. "He's my son. I'm proud of him." That was it. 10 words. Not even a full sentence in his usual book. But it hit like a truck. Something in my chest cracked open. Not like it broke, more like it thawed. Ice, thick and silent, melting into something warm and sharp at the same time. My arms stayed at my sides, but my throat tightened so hard I had to clench my jaw to keep it from shaking. 17 years. 17 years of watching his approval go to strangers. Of guessing if the nod at dinner meant anything. Of pretending it didn't matter. 17 years of silence that felt colder than yelling. And then this. No disclaimers. No conditions. No, but you should try harder, or if only you did more. Just, I'm proud. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. And maybe that was okay. Because neither of us said love. He didn't whisper it. I didn't reply with it. But that moment, that sentence, that hug, that press of his hand between my shoulder blades, that was our version of the word. The closest either of us knew how to get. And for the first time in my life, it felt like it was enough. After the garden ceremony, Leo ran up to me with something cradled in his hands. A small tomato bush, still in its plastic pot, soil spilling over the edge. The kind you get from a nursery with a tag that says something like Early Girl or Cherry Bell in faded green letters. He held it out like it was treasure. "Keep it," he said. "Because you're cool." I didn't know what to say, just nodded and took it, trying not to crush the stem between my fingers. He grinned, then darted off toward the snack table like it was the finish line. I brought it home, set it on the windowsill in the kitchen, right above the sink. That spot doesn't get a ton of sun, but enough to keep something alive. The leaves were bright, wiry, trying hard to stretch upward. I watered it, barely, just a splash from a glass. Didn't think much of it after that. But a few days later, something else happened. Jacob spilled a box of cereal on the floor. It went everywhere, a cascade of O's and flakes sliding under the counter and crunching underfoot. I was already bracing for the sound. The sharp breath, the barked-out correction, the tension thick enough to choke on. But it didn't come. Wade walked into the kitchen, looked at the mess, and instead of scowling, he just sighed and reached for the broom. Then he glanced at Jacob and said, "You still working on that rocket?" Jacob nodded, wide-eyed. "I want to see it fly," he said steady. Not a demand. Not a test. Just interest. And that's when I knew something had shifted. Something real. There were no lines anymore. No roles we were all stuck in, scared to break character. No soldier. No commander. No invisible script we had to read from like it was the only thing holding us together. We were just people, in a room, trying. The plant's still there, on the windowsill. The leaves curl slightly at the tips now, reaching toward the morning light. A few yellow flowers opened last week. I think fruit will come soon, if I remember to keep watering it. It's small, but it's growing. And so are we. Slowly, quietly, without loud declarations or perfect words. But for the first time, together. Thanks for reading, Reddit. I've shared more here than I've said out loud in years, and I'm still trying to process most of it. What do you think? Have you ever had someone you thought was unchangeable actually shift? Do people like that really grow? Or do we just learn to meet them halfway? Would love to hear your thoughts.